to 1111 at the Grotto. I'm Adam, and on behalf of all of us here, we're so thankful that you've decided to join us. Whether this is maybe your first time or you're coming back again, 1111 is a chance for us to demystify and unpack what church can look like. We start together singing a song of praise from the book of Psalms, which are poetry and songs written in gratitude to God, asking Him for the things that we need. And then we focus in on the gospel, which is the good news and the story of Jesus. From wheels up to wheels down, this never takes more than like 10, 15 minutes. So let's get started.
Today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. Turn back to dust, saying, return, O children of men. For 1,000 years in your sight are as yesterday now that it is past, or as a watch of the night. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. You make an end of them in their sleep. The next morning they are like the changing grass, which at dawn springs up anew, but by evening wilts and fades. So if today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. Teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain wisdom of heart. Return, O Lord, how long? Have pity on your servants. So we sing it today. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. Fill us at daybreak with your kindness, that we may shout for joy and gladness all our days. And may the gracious care of the Lord our God be ours. Oh, prosper the works of our hands for us. Prosper the works of our hands. Oh, prosper the works of our hands for us. Prosper the works of our hands. And if today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. One more time. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. If today you hear His voice, harden not your hearts. Amen.
One of the shows I remember watching the most when I was growing up was the show called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Some of you may remember that. If you're of a certain age, maybe you don't. But it was a show hosted by a guy named Robin Leach, who kind of had this very pretentious British accent. And he was always talking with famous, wealthy, powerful people about their big palatial mansions and their big expensive cars and their private jets and their yachts and the things that they spend their money on. And I remember being fascinated with this and being a kid and being like, I want to grow up and I want to have a huge house and I want to have fast cars and I want to have all of this money. Growing up, I listened to two very distinct types of music. I listened to a lot of really fast and angry, like punk and hardcore music, and I had a really deep love for hip-hop. And when it came to East Coast hip-hop, there was one group that solidified it for me, Wu-Tang Clan. And they had the song Cash Rules Everything Around Me, C.R.E.A.M. And I think that maybe more so than in any generation in history, my generation, maybe the ones around mine, have had such an emphasis placed on wealth and money and things. And Jesus teaches us really clearly in the gospel this week not to put an emphasis on money and wealth and things. It says this, it says, someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though you may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Then he told him a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all of my grain and other goods, and then I shall say to myself, now as for you who have so many good things stored up for so many years, rest, eat, drink, be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus it will be for all those who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God." Now, just kind of off the rip, I don't know about you, but if I'm living my life and at some point God tells me, "You fool," I think I may have messed up. I know that there's been plenty of times where, like, Kate and I will be in a discussion, and I don't think she's ever called me a fool, but if she's ever pointed out, like, you have done something glaringly stupid here, I kind of like, all right, I gotta step back, I gotta pause. But God tells this rich man who has decided that he is so rich that even the stuff that he has can't contain his wealth anymore. And he says, "I'm going to tear it all down. I'm going to build bigger barns, bigger storage for all of my grain and all of my stuff. And then when I can put it all in there, then I'm finally going to be happy. When my bank account is so big and fat, I can live exactly the way I want. Now I can finally be happy. Now I can eat, rest, and be merry." But what God is trying to show us is the power of money. Now, some people will say something like that money is the root of all evil. And money itself isn't actually bad. But when we develop a love of money, when we develop an unhealthy relationship with money and wealth and power and things, then they become damaging. Then it's unhealthy. So what are we supposed to do? Well, I mean, believe me, this is not some message about giving money or donations or passing around a basket. That's not what this is about. But we, as a society, are the wealthiest in the history of the world. There are more billionaires alive than ever before. There are rich people who can lose so much money that they can earn it back in a heartbeat, and they will never spend all of it. But what do we do as regular, everyday people with our money, with our things? Well, many of us are taught about the importance of, like, financial planning. Kate and I, we have 2 kids, and we want to try and plan for their future and set them up for success as best we can. I'm going to admit that we kind of got to that game a little bit later than most, but at least we're trying now. But when we don't see all of the blessings that we have, and when we are blind to those who have not, that is us developing an unhealthy relationship with money, with things. Jesus says, you can't serve God and mammon. And what that means is you can't have 2 masters. God, who is love, who is charity, and mammon, which is a love of money and things. So we have to be smart with what we do with that money, what we do with our resources. But I think there's also another message in here that Jesus is trying to reveal to us. It's not just about being generous with our money and helping others with those resources, but it's also, what kind of relationship are we building with the things in our lives? I say all the time, I tell jokes all the time, that there are more pictures of my kids than I think there are of JFK. I am constantly behind my screen. Just the other day, my family and I, we went to Buffalo for a family wedding, and then we decided to take a quick detour on the way home to Niagara Falls. And we were walking past Niagara Falls, and we're like, wow, this is pretty cool. And they've got that Maid of the Mist boat ride. And Kate and I just kind of looked at each other and said, you know what? Let's go for it. It wasn't cheap, but let's go for it. So we went down and we rode the Maid of the Mist, and this is this amazing sight of Niagara Falls, just breathtaking. It's beautiful. It's overwhelming. It's awesome. And I tried to snap a couple pictures of us, and I remember the look that Kate gave me, like, get off your phone. We don't need to document all of this. Let's make a memory. And I just put my phone away. I just remember watching my kids laugh and scream at the mist and all of the roaring water, and we were just laughing and having a blast as we're just getting soaked. Even in the ponchos, we're just getting drenched. And when I thought about that in the context of what Jesus is trying to share with us, what am I willing to let go of to be part of the kingdom here and now? We pray that prayer all the time, especially at 11:11. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And part of having the kingdom be here on earth is, yes, being generous, helping the poor, doing those things that Jesus asks us to do to be generous. But also it's about being here and now. It's about giving up those connections to these things that get in the way of being here and now with the people that we love, with being here and now with our neighbor, with being here and now with those in need, being present and seeing them. On that same trip to Buffalo, we were walking around the city. My wife went to school there, and she wanted to show us her campus at the college she went to. And right nearby, there's one of her favorite sandwich shops. And we stopped in there to get lunch. And just right outside the door, there was a guy who was asking for some help, saying like, hey, can you spare $1 or $2? I'd really appreciate it. And I wanted to. I looked at my wallet to look, and I didn't have any cash on me, and I said, I'm sorry. I think we all kind of do that. We see people who are panhandling, asking for money, and we just kind of brush it off. And we just finished eating lunch. Like, I bought lunch for Kate and the kids and I. And I remember Gus looked at me like, Dad, can we get him lunch? And I just thought, I'm like, wow, like he saw him. He saw that there was somebody in need, and like, I can't give him cash for anything, but yeah, let's go get him a bite to eat. And I said, hey, can I grab you some lunch real quick? And he said, sure, I'd like this kind of sandwich if it's okay, and like a soda. I said, absolutely. So we went back into the sandwich shop, bought him a sandwich, bought him a drink. And I asked the clerk, or the person at the counter, said, hey, is it okay if he comes in and eats? Because it was a hot day. Can he come in and have some air conditioning? They're like, absolutely. I invited him inside, and I introduced myself and Gus to him. His name was Earl. And for me, that was a really important moment for me, for Gus, for our family, to acknowledge people and not let things or money get in the way of real relationships. And I think at the root of it, that's what Jesus wants. When Jesus teaches us about when money becomes evil, when things become distractions, it's because he wants us to be in the here and now. Jesus himself talks about not preoccupying ourselves with our past and not worrying about what's going to happen in the future, but be here and now. So as we go forward, as we go into our homes with our families, into our workplaces with our coworkers, into our neighborhoods and communities, let's be a people who are of the here and the now. Hey, thanks again for joining us for 11:11 at the Grotto. If you have any questions about the Grotto, 11:11, or anything else, visit us online and connect with us at thegrotto.community.